Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button. And if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. 5 Seconds of Summer. 5 Sauce 5. 5 Seconds of Summer are an Australian pop rock, mostly pop group now, one of my favorite bands of the past decade. Recently, they've been doing something a little bit differently though. Their last album, Calm, was easily the band's low point, and since then, both members Ashton and Luke have gone on to put out solo records, with both making my year-end list for their respective years. Luke's actually topped mine. And while I kinda expected Michael and Callum to follow suit, I'm not gonna complain with another full group album, and here it is, their fifth, appropriately titled 5 Sauce 5. So let's just dive in. What are my thoughts on 5 Sauce 5? Let's find out as I review it track by track. We will start with the singles, with there fittingly being 5 of them. The first being the opener, Complete Mess, and I'm not gonna lie, this track never really got me excited for the album. It's not a bad track by any means, but it just feels like a weird choice of a single. It's got a murky, moody guitar lick followed by snaps, and when that chorus comes in, it feels way more bombastic than it really needs to be. The mix gets so expansive and it kind of just feels like it's a track that was loud for the sake of being a lead-off single. Luke mentioned that on this track the band took a stream of consciousness approach where nothing was overthought and it kind of just happened, and in that case I get it. That doesn't change my opinion of it though. I think if the song took a bit more of a stripped back, kind of melancholic style, it would be much more appealing and fitting to these lyrics. As it stands though, if I'm being honest, I don't care for this one. The second single, Take My Hand, which isn't actually the original single, but instead listed as the Joshua Tree version on the album, and it's a whole minute longer than the regular version. The core song here is identical between versions, starting off with this glossy, ethereal ambience for the first verse, only for the first chorus to bring in this light, understated bass drum, giving the track a very simple yet catchy rhythm, and Luke's vocal melody is absolutely infectious, a vibe that gradually builds with each succeeding chorus. This was the first track that truly got me excited for the new album. However, this Joshua Tree version is absolutely unnecessary as the core version for the record. All it has is this minute-long voice memo from Luke while they were recording at the Joshua Tree National Park. I don't see why this was the version that needed to be added over the normal song. I think this would have been better as like a deluxe or bonus track. I'm gonna stick to the original, but the song as a whole is pretty great. The third single, Me, Myself, and I, which begins pretty tame with this sticky electric guitar strumming, done to death 1,000 times, but I'm telling you, as soon as that chorus kicks in with Luke's falsetto, it just reignited my passion for this band. They are inhumanly good at finding a catchy melody and running with it. After that chorus, the finalized groove kicks in with the smooth snare, chunkier riff, and the subsequent chorus broadening the track and just feeling so expansive. It's not the most mind-blowing or forward-thinking track by any means, but what it has, it does so well. The fourth single, Blender, is hands down my favorite single, and probably my favorite track on the entire record. This track really reminds me of Teeth off of Calm, but a bit less guttural and has a bit more of a slap. The bass lick that first introduces the track, accompanied by the sandy rustling of the shaker, and Luke's semi-whispered vocals instigate that vibe right away. Another thing too, I just love syllabically dense choruses. The ones where there's a very defined melody, but the lyrics come off quicker or more like an incessant train of thought quality, relying less on the musicality and more on the vocalist's ability to ride the aforementioned melody. Something about that just glues itself into my brain and stays there for the rest of the day, and Blender is one of those tracks with its groovy bass line and retro-tinted snare. It's also the shortest track on the album, not even being 2.5 minutes. It gets done when it needs to and doesn't stay for too long, which really amplifies the replay factor for me. This track is absolutely fantastic, and at least for me, could be in contention for top 5 songs in the band's entire discography. And the fifth and final single, Older, featuring Sierra Deaton, and this is a beautiful, kind of damaging ballad, probably one of the band's most depressing ballads. Sure, the band also had tracks like Amnesia and Broken Home, both being hard-hitting, but they both came to this emotional climax that put a sonic comfort on the heartfelt lyrics. This one is just straight melancholy all the time, and I think it suits the band well, especially Luke's downtrodden vocals that remind me of some of the songs from his solo album, which I can't complain about if I tried. The lyrics are like Amnesia, but with a bachelor's degree, as mature as these lyrics about not wanting to live life without the significant other can be. And that feeling is pretty potent with the more mellow piano and strings. I think it's a good track. Now for the rest of the tracks. Easy for You to Say is probably the most breezy and relaxing track on the record. I can just imagine a music video of people running through tall grass with the sun shining, that sort of style. This track kind of highlights one of Five Sauce's defining characteristics for me, the melodies, man, because this instrumental doesn't give too much to talk about. Very steady but kind of flat percussion, luscious synths and some simple guitar work, but hearing Luke float over this airy pop rock beat just puts a smile on my face. And the falsettos he drops on this chorus are so feathery and feel so carefree. A lot of people seem to be speculating that this will be a later single choice. I think that would be a good idea. Bad Omens, however, is the track that I believe is actually being pushed as the next single, and I also think this is a fantastic choice. Yet again delivering a great melody that gradually rises up with this bubbly pops of the percussion and shrill metal guitar shredding hanging in the background, which eventually adds these opulent strings. It's a very smooth pop instrumental and really unlike anything the band has done before. Luke's vocal work across the track is very solid yet again. I love the soaring performance he gives for the chorus, and yeah, an all-around good track. Carousel continues this album's streak of immaculately catchy pop rock tracks, with this one having some punchier percussion and more active falsettos. It opens up with these slashing yet vast synths and light bass pounds, serving as a great build-up with Luke's more reserved delivery, kind of giving me flashbacks to Blender. And while it doesn't reach that same level of pop hookiness, this is still one that'll get lodged into your brain. It almost gives me a bit of Killers vibes, which is one I really like. And I really like this track as a result. Haze instantly makes itself known with this very prominent snare just pounding like it's knocking on a door. It's borderline distracting but keeps the beat nice and steady over wavy synths. I love Callum taking the chorus, yet again just another catchy, simple hook that really resonates behind the more developed instrumental. I will say though, I'm not a fan of the drop, I guess you can call it, especially with the plucky, squawky guitar, but it's a snappy song and I like it. You Don't Go to Parties kicks off with this glossy yet moody guitar lick and then proceeds to go through several different tonal changes. These dense yet muted bass pulses and then this clap-along stadium pop rock melody, which is where the track rests for its chorus. It's a chorus that reminds me of the band's earlier days, which only makes me love it more. Callum takes the bulk of the track vocally, and I've always had a soft spot for his slightly more nasally voice, and he really kills it here, especially for the verses. If anything, this is just a nostalgic track for me. Feels like they dug this out of the archives and improved it for the modern era and sound of this band, and I think they knocked it out of the park. Carousel, which starts things in a kind of breezy, carefree style, the light twinkly guitar plucking paired with the smothered snare and Luke's breathier falsetto make the track one of the more mellow highs on the album, really only aside from the pseudo drop that has these scratchy electronic touches as the percussion pounds. The piano that appears later in the track is quite beautiful as well. Even if it doesn't stay for too long, it transitions nicely into the aforementioned drop. Pretty good cut, certainly not a favorite of mine, but an all-around good listen. Best Friends almost begins in a bit of a comical fashion with this unorthodox instrumental. The synths are overly springy and kind of silly, which don't play that well over these upbeat strings. Thankfully, when that pre-chorus comes in and the synths go away and get replaced by some simple snaps, then we seem to return to sanity. The chorus here is pretty great. The percussion feels very full and nourished, which helps it feel like an appropriately punchy peak. However, my favorite part of the track has to be Michael coming in for the second verse. I've always adored his voice, and I wish he gets to sing more. All that aside, another good track. Bleach instantly diverts my expectations by starting off with this transcendental ambience, almost feeling like it's going to be a gorgeous, soaring pop banger, and then the ambience stops and drops right back and down to a moody guitar plucking. This track also has one of the most anticlimactic choruses on the record. Usually when a song succumbs to that moodiness and the bouncier pre-chorus, it really makes me feel like an actual chorus is going to explode, and this one really doesn't. It's extremely unsatisfying. Lyrically, it does fit into the more melancholic side, just being about trying to wash the memories of this person out of your life. It's an okay one, but not a favorite of mine. Red Line is probably one of the more subtle and feathery bangers on the record. It doesn't hit as hard as tracks like Blender, but has a similar intoxicating nature as it starts with some serene synths and bright acoustics, gradually building up with faint bass thumps, all leading to an admittedly flat climax, but Luke's airy falsetto makes the transition feel more pleasant than disappointing. I will say though, the track does feel very stretched out and thin, especially noticeable near the end with the wispy bridge and the ambient ending. I think it could have cut out a bit earlier, but it still makes for a solid enough vibe. Moodswings brings in an acoustic cut a lot later than I would have expected, but for what it is, it's good. Again, I always enjoy hearing Michael sing, and the second half of the first verse delivers that, but Luke's soaring chorus really resonates well. Thankfully, it does gain some percussion to add a more comfortably poppy quality to the track around the second verse, as these lyrics just seem to be about the worrisome fear that your partner may be slipping away from you, and how your mood swings and violent words may just be the cause of that. Yeah, decent track. Flatline has a lot of elements I typically enjoy, but unfortunately this one just has that one flaw that makes me instinctively back away from it, and that is Luke's unbearable falsetto for the chorus. It's extremely shrill and high-pitched, and especially being paired with the suddenly introduced bright guitar strumming, it almost feels like it was meant for a different song entirely. It's such a shame too because I love the verses. The plucky bass, hissing percussion, and an actual decent performance from Luke, you know what you'd expect, but that chorus is such a killjoy and really does not make me want to come back to this one. Emotions is a track I've seen pretty much everyone label as trash or the least favorite on the record, and I don't get why. Sure, I'm impartial to it because Michael sings the entire track, and I love his bluer delivery over the more downtrodden acoustic guitar on the first minute or so. My best guess as to why is because the lyrics are a bit shallow and the melody is pretty simple, sure I guess, but to me that's not enough to deserve widespread derision. I just think it's a pleasant track. Bloodhound is probably the last tried and true banger displayed on the record, and while I do think it's at a bit of an odd place layered in between the mellow closing leg of the record, it's still a fun track in its own right. The melody is catchy, I like the guitar synchronized with the percussion, and while Luke's vocals may not be the most unique or memorable, he does well enough with what's given. Also, the track earns its instant good status hearing Michael sing "He Took an L" unironically. Yeah, it's an all-around good tune. And finally, the closer, Tears, which is not quite the track I was expecting to end the record, but I still really love this one, and it's probably my favorite song off this back half entirely. It has such a glorious pop punch to it, especially on the chorus with rupturing drums that culminated from a very satisfying verse melody sung by Ashton. Also enjoy the moodier bridge, brings the track down to a nice level before transitioning into the softer end of the chorus, while these lyrics are about just being very down, spending the night in tears and desperately hoping to feel alive again. It doesn't necessarily give off that vibe, but the darkness of the bass and passionate vocals in the chorus hint at that underlying meaning. Great song. Overall, this is probably the band's best album since Sounds Good Feels Good. I am blown away by how consistent it is. Chock full of catchy pop melodies, loaded with incredible vocal efforts by all four members. It's like the elements of the earlier days that I love so much combined with the pop sheen of the newer albums. Of course, the album still did have its flops. It's not perfect, but this is a fantastic record that I think some outsiders of the band could even get into. Truly a great achievement for a band coming off arguably their most lackluster release, seeming more rejuvenated than ever, and I hope it only goes up for them. I'm feeling an 8.5 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.